Let's throw our
papaya
in the air as we soar through the papaya. We'll catch the papaya with your
papaya
in mind, and if we work as a team, everything will be
papaya.
Oh, it's cure of the what now?
Let's henshin and start papaya.
Hello, fellow seekers of the legendary papaya, and welcome to episode 41 of
Cure of the what now?
the one show where we know even something you've never tasted before can be delicious when licked with a pal. My name is Kat, I'm your host, and I am the legendary fruit of which you seek.
It was in your heart all along. I am Joel, the co-host of the show, and honestly, I'm so embarrassed that I could just bury myself in a hole.
Oh, do you see a hole around here? I can dig you one if you want. Grab a shovel, man.
Usually I just dig my own holes with the way that I
With your
speak
words.
to other people. Also, can I offer you a papaya in these troubling times?
A densetsu no papaya?
A densetsu no papaya, that's right.
Papaya. So this episode's word of the day is obviously kumquat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And if you tweet that word at us, we will send you back a gif of Minori.
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense.
That's a reasonable promise, I think.
So, before we get into this episode, let's go into the discussion question.
Sure, that's allowed.
Now, we had two that we thought were both relevant. However, one is relevant to an anime that has a couple more episodes left in the season for us. But the other one is very specific to an episode of Fresh that we're going to discuss later this episode. So, what kid-friendly method would you use to elicit maximum despair from a town of people?
I like that you had to specify because you knew that I would just get violent.
Well, because the obvious answer is murder. You just murder some people. That would cause quite a bit of despair. Danganronpa taught us that years ago.
Yeah, but the despair in Danganronpa really came from the way they were pit against one another in the wake of the murders. It wasn't necessarily the murders themselves. Because you can only get so much despair from a single murder, or even a string of murders. Eventually, you become kind of numb to it. Uh-huh. Whereas I think something that's like ongoing and continually happening produces more despair. Okay. Anyway, if I were going to do something to produce the maximum amount of kid-friendly despair, I would make schools year-round with mandatory uniforms.
Oh. Okay.
That's just Japanese schools.
No, they get like summer break, don't they?
I don't think it works the same way it does here. I don't think they get months off. I think they get like a week. But I know nothing about Japan, so I could be completely wrong.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So I think, and we'll go into this when we talk about the episode itself, but I think that one of the best ways is to create a sense of isolation. Like, what if Momozona Love woke up in a town where her parents were gone, where Setsuna was gone, there was no Tart, and she was the only person left. Meanwhile, everyone else wakes up in their own version of the town where no one else is there.
Another version of that you could do is the people of the town don't recognize one another.
Yeah, exactly.
So they respond to one another with like suspicion and anger.
Mm-hmm. Or like even just confusion when like, I don't know who you are, but you just create this sense of isolation that I don't think that for most people it would immediately cause them to despair, but I think give it like an hour or two and it would really start to wear on people.
Absolutely. So. Really quick, once again, listeners, I have to apologize. We have a puppy who was sleeping peacefully in her kennel and then heard us start to podcast and decide that was the best time to start up her "help, nobody loves me" sounds. So I promise no puppies are being tortured. There is no despair being wrought in our downstairs. She's just mad that she doesn't get to be on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she has some very important notes that she took concerning Cure Magical and Cure Miracle, and we tried to explain to her that we are not discussing Maho Tsukai this week, but she is a dog and does not understand human language, but understands TV shows somehow?
Somehow?
Yeah.
She understands the feelings behind a TV show. She just doesn't understand literal English words.
She, like a character we'll discuss shortly, is fixated with the densetsu no papaya, even though she has no concept of what that is.
Do you have a sweet, succinct summary for me?
Yes. Manatsu asks Minori to write a story or adapt her, what was it called? A Mermaid's Tale, I think. A Mermaid's Tale into a stage play that they can do in the school festival or the graduation ceremony. Side note, we should talk about that as a specific thing in its own section. But Minori gets really depressed because the last time she tried to write a story, it didn't come out too well. And then Minatsu's like, let's go look for the legendary papaya. And Asuka's like, she knows that there's no such thing as legendary papaya. She's just trying to help out a friend. And then Minori goes, I'm not depressed anymore. I'll write a story about all of us. Elda shows up briefly and really has no bearing on the plot. You just need a monster of the week in order to get them to transform. And then the episode ends with Minori being like, okay, I'll write a stage play, but instead of it being a Mermaid's Tale, it'll be the story of our group coming together, and we will call it Tropical Rouge PreCure.
Now, usually this would be the part of the episode where I ask if you liked this episode of Tropical Rouge. However, you spent, I want to say, 20 minutes discussing how much you did not like it on Discord with other PreCure fans.
So that's actually, I was anticipating that you were going to say, Joel, did you like this episode? And I was going to say, before I answer that question, can you tell me what was Minori's character arc in this episode in your own experience?
Okay. Minori's character arc was that she realized her writing fell flat because it didn't rely on any actual experience, but by going out with her friends, she realized she had had all sorts of new experiences with them, and she could take those experiences and put them into her writing going forward.
Oh, okay. I like that. I've seen a couple of different people talk about the episode in a couple of different ways. Some people seemed to be taking it in the direction of Minori doesn't have any self-confidence, and now she has gained that self-confidence. I've seen some people saying that, she didn't... I mean, I guess that's still... It was about her writing and how she didn't think that she was going to be good enough, like an imposter syndrome type of thing, and then she overcame that. And some were saying that it's that she didn't have the courage to try new experiences, but now she is. And to me, the episode at surface value, I know I'm being flippant. I know that this was a metaphorical episode, but it really felt like the message really was as deep as she'd never eaten this type of fruit before, and now that she has eaten this type of fruit before, she has eaten it, and that's allowed her to overcome her trauma. I did not like this episode.
So I think there are two things that are affecting your enjoyment of the episode. I think the first one is that you have trouble seeing past kind of the surface value. I think in a lot of ways when you engage with media, you like things to be explicit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's one of the reasons that shonen and PreCure appeal to you. But I think it means that when they try to be more subtle, if they don't do a really excellent job of being subtle, it just misses you.
Okay.
I think the other problem, and we've talked about this in context of My Little Pony, we've talked about it in context of background characters in One Piece that people get really attached to, the less information you have about a person and their motives, the more you can project onto them. So really, you're right. All we got from this episode was Minori felt bad about her writing. She ate a papaya. She went, I have some friends, and she doesn't feel bad about her writing anymore. And I mean, I think that my interpretation of the episode is the correct one. We obviously will always all think
Sure.
our own interpretation is correct. But if you just take that surface level approach, I think that people see that and they project their own feelings of experience with creative things onto it. And so I think that people get more out of the episode that way than you do just looking at what's there, because you don't have the context of all of their private thoughts and experiences.
That's fair. It's kind of ironic because we've now had 3 episodes near the end of the series that have focused on one of the core 5 characters. In Asuka's episode, it was a relationship that she was trying to mend. And in Sango's episode, it was a matter of trying to pursue her future dreams. And in Minori's, it was writing. And I have written stories before, and I actually could theoretically empathize with Minori in this episode insofar as I also freeze up sometimes when I sit down and I'm planning on writing. But for some reason, even though I've had the same experience as Minori, I don't see Minori and say she's experiencing a real human emotion like I am. I see she's a character and they needed her to have an arc, so she couldn't do a thing, but now she can do a thing, and that kind of a...
Well, and it's hard, too, because on one hand, I do see the seeds that they planted up to this point in the episode. On the other hand, I do feel like the Sango episode, like the Asuka episode, it sort of came out of nowhere because they abandoned a lot of those character threads, and they weren't consistent through the whole season so far.
Sure. If I could suggest what I might have done if I were the writer of this episode, maybe I would have had the episode start with Minori trying to write a story, or like trying to do a sequel, or trying to revise the novel, or maybe she was just doing a brand new idea, and you could see all of these different drafts like crossed out, like she's unhappy with how the story is coming out no matter how many times she tries it. Or maybe she's been meeting with that upperclassman that we've seen in flashbacks and trying to be like, is this better than the version before? And they'd be like, it's getting better, but it's still not good. It's still not amazing. And so this episode could have been about Minori realizing what it is that makes stories interesting, and then learning that what she has to like put herself into the story. I think that would have worked really well. But just between the fact that Minori has never really been my favorite character and the fact that this didn't really reveal any new aspect of her personality, it felt a little flat to me.
I personally really liked this episode, possibly because of the projection thing that I was talking about, possibly just because it was hilarious, and it was a hilarious episode.
This episode helped me appreciate Manatsu more than I did before.
How is that possible? She's already the GOAT.
She's so good. We've talked about it before, but in this episode, Manatsu's arm flailing, arm pumping was, it was bad.
It was out of control,
It absolutely was. But at the beginning of the episode, she shows up at Minori's house, so the entire Tropical Club show up, and they go, let's go out and find the legendary papaya. And Manatsu runs off, and Asuka goes, you know she knows it's not real. And I, out loud, to you, said... Does she, though? Does she really know?
And then we get to the end of the episode, and she's like, I wish we really would have found it, though.
And Asuka's like, wait, hang on, you were actually looking for the real legendary papaya. She has no brain cells.
My other favorite bit is because Manatsu has no brain cells, she reads this story that Minori wrote that's, pretty flat. It's a middle schooler's first story, whatever. But she sees the words legendary papaya, and she goes to Minori and she goes, what did it taste like? What did it look like? What did it feel like? Like, she wants all the sensory details. Minori's like, papayas grow on trees. Sometimes they're green. And Manatsu's like, hang on a second. And Minori's like, I've never eaten a papaya. And Manatsu says,
but you've written a papaya story.
Which made Joel just howl with laughter. He had to pause the episode.
I couldn't breathe for like a brief second because, like, just out of context, but you wrote a papaya story is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. It was an excellent episode. Another thing, too, about my own headcanon and how I understood Minori's character. We've talked about Brandon Sanderson a lot, and I think that the best writers can extrapolate and come up with, like, what? Okay, this magic thing doesn't actually exist. Dark Souls, right? We don't actually live in a world that's, like, literally decaying and that kind of a thing, and there aren't giant 50-foot monsters that gave humanity their whatever. But the people who write the best stories can put themselves in that universe and ask questions like, okay, what if there was a magic that physically consumed your body? What would that feel like? What effects would that have on the population? How would it affect economics? So Minori, to me, feels like a character who would have considered all of those things. If anything, I would have expected her story to have too many details, to be too technical, and people would be like, I don't really get it. You talked about the texture of the papaya for 30 pages, and you could just say it's a papaya.
A 10-page Muda.
Right, exactly. And so when she was like, oh, I've never actually considered what the legendary papaya would be like, that was kind of jarring to me, and that's my fault for thrusting that kind of headcanon onto her, but she seems like the one who's the most detail-oriented.
Here's the problem. I think as an adult writer who has grown into herself, she absolutely will be like that. But once again, I think you have to take into context that this is a middle schooler.
Okay. Yeah.
I can tell you, my first story in middle school was not good. It was not good, and neither was my second or my third. Or most of the stories I write now, not good. So it does take a lot of work to get there, but I could see why, as the kind of analytical character, you would expect that from her.
Mm-hmm.
There was one other Manatsu scene that I have to shout out. Minori says she wants to die in a hole.
Which actually was, I will say this, as much as I didn't like this episode, and listen, I'm being flippant. If Minori is your favorite character, please don't take offense. But this episode showed us that Minori can outwardly express an emotion.
Listen, fam, our favorite character is Sango, and she has nothing. So we can't make fun of anybody else for their taste, is all I'm saying.
What I mean is that if you want to be overly pedantic, we have seen Minori express emotions before. She's had small smiles on her faces, and she's been thoughtful, etc., etc. But usually in the anime that we watch, characters will have very expressive facial expressions, and Minori usually has more subdued ones. But in this episode, when they pointed out that she's never eaten a papaya, she actually she gets flustered. She goes, ah! And I thought that was adorable. That was the cutest she's ever been.
It was really cute. But anyway, she wants to die in a hole. She's laying on the ground, hiding her face. Manatsu starts looking around and goes, I don't see a hole. Should I dig one for you? I love that. That's the energy I try to bring to my friendships. We're not wallowing in self-pity today.
Okay.
Either get up or I'll dig your hole for you.
See, I that's not the impression I got. The impression that I got was that Manatsu wants to help her friend, so her friend expressed the desire to be in a hole, and Manatsu doesn't even realize that it's a self-deprecating thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Manatsu is far too stupid to be doing it on purpose,
right.
But I'm not.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
Did you have anything else about this episode that you wanted to discuss or point out?
They explicitly point out that it would be weird for Cure Papaya to not like papayas, which is very interesting because we've had a couple of other characters who are named after fruits and foods and stuff, especially fresh PreCure. Papaya has more of a connection to her fruit than pine, berry, or peach. And I mean, technically passion is a type of fruit as well, but it's the metaphor of she's a passionate character, or she's discovering her passion. But at the same time, why papayas? I know different people can have different special interests, and there doesn't have to be a rhyme or reason to it. But I need there to be a backstory episode where it shows why she chose a papaya over literally any other fruit, and why she chose a fruit over literally any other concept.
It's a metaphor, Hazel Grace.
You put the papaya in your mouth, but you don't give it the power to be fruity.
To do its fruiting. Oh, man. I got to make at least one metaphor joke this episode. So
what's a metaphor?
Nothing. What's a metaphor you? I'm sorry. I love that joke. As our listeners can probably attest, I'm sure I've made it before.
Nah.
The problem is that we have Himurine in Kira Kira PreCure a la mode.
The longest episode title ever.
Serious?
Yeah, I've always said episode.
Have you?
I try to correct myself every time, and I always, well, not always, once or twice I've said title, but usually I say episode, even though that's not.
Huh. Anyway, we had Himurine, and she did have a reason for pudding. And her reason was she ate one once, and it was a life-changing experience.
See, in Kira Kira PreCure a la mode, they all had emotional ties to their to their sweet, the thing that they baked. But in terms of you have a character named after a fruit, this is the only time that we've really ever had any reason to connect the actual person with the fruit that they transform into. As far as I can tell, the creators of Fresh just wanted to sell PreCure marketed smoothies, and that's why they picked different fruits.
It's very possible. I wonder if they were what are some tropical things? And papaya was the only tropical fruit they could think of.
Sure.
Knowing Minori, I'm sure it's something simple like she had to do a school report on papayas and she just was fascinated by the farming process and the fact that they can be used as both a vegetable and a fruit.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay, yeah. So it was like a mandatory assignment thing and she just fell in love kind of a thing. Kind of like how for about a week in 6th grade, I knew more about the country of Chad than any other foreign nation outside of the United States. That knowledge has long since left me, but...
But you know what knowledge hasn't left you? Napoleon wasn't really short.
Napoleon was not short. He was a couple of inches taller than the average French person at that time.
Why was he depicted as short? Was it because other nations were taller?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know. Like, I think he had a superiority complex. Like, he had that going for him. So I think maybe cartoons kind of made him short to kind of, like, juxtapose, like, his big ideas compared to his short stature. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get into the broccoli of this episode. We watched Futari Wa. Also, this is episode 41 of Cure of the What Now, by the way. I forgot to say episode 41 when I did the intro bit, because we did the intro 27 flippin' times.
Catherine is full of beans today.
I am not the bean can. You are the can what is full of beans. I'm a regular Catherine.
Let the record reflect that I simply made an offhand comment, that we were full of energy, and Catherine went into a monologue. So
I did what?
We watched episode 41 of Futari Wa PreCure, and I am ready to be done with this series. In addition to a extended conversation in the pre-cord server about my feelings on this episode with Minori and why everyone loved it and how frustrating it was to be the only person on Earth who didn't seem to like it. Futari Wa, man. It's like a funnel, and it's nothing but pure concentrated broccoli shooting into my mouth.
I think there are two problems. Two problems with Futari Wa. Problem number one is that we started with better seasons. And by better, I mean more aligned to our tastes. So Star Twinkle and Kira Kira both had an overarching plot. They had a thing that the characters were trying to achieve. They had interesting villains. They had a whole team of characters. So like maybe even if you don't like the Ichika episodes, maybe you can latch on to the Aoi episodes. Futari Wa has none of that. Futari Wa is really just a slice of life show about two girls who are very different becoming friends with monsters as like seasoning. As the little sprinkle of kosher salt on top of your pork chop. So for our tastes, Futari Wa just doesn't work.
Yeah. I would also say in relation to the show being about Nagisa and Honoka's relationship, undoubtedly that's like the thesis of the series. And there are some episodes that are really good at focusing on like, remember how we used to be in the same class, but we didn't actually get along? Or, you know, they have a fight and that sort of thing. But then other episodes are just like, what is happening here? And it's really not about either of the two characters. It's just about a city and there happens to be a monster.
Mm-hmm.
But let me give a succinct summary for those of you who have not seen 41 or maybe haven't seen it in a while. It is the lacrosse championships. So Nagisa and her team are really expected to win this one. And Honoka is there to cheer them on. The bad guys have realized, okay, there's the power of the stones and the power of creation, which I think are different. And then there's the power of darkness, which, okay, that makes sense. But then there's also the power of annihilation, which is different. And the power of annihilation is destroying Jakukang. And also, it might be affecting the evil general. So Belze is like, we must first consider if this is a problem or not. And Juna goes, what do you mean if it's a problem or not? I'm going to go out and crush those PreCure girls. So he uses magic to summon Nagisa and Honoka to a special one-on-one combat arena, except I guess it's technically 2-on-1, whatever. He kicks their butts, and he's going to destroy them. Their Rainbow Storm is not powerful enough to defeat him. He's getting stronger by the minute somehow. But then the power of annihilation causes his body to explode. And then the girl shows up, Regine, I think is her name. She shows up and goes, curse you, PreCure, I can't believe you've done this to my ally, even though the PreCure girls did nothing. And then they leave, and then Nagisa goes back to the lacrosse game, and they win in overtime. So this episode really had two different plots. It had the lacrosse plot, which as far as, these are middle schoolers and this is the most important day in Nagisa's life, I can get behind that. She wanted to try really hard, and her team has put in a lot of effort in those 2 episodes that focused on the team putting in the effort. But the stuff with the bad guys was so bad and so dumb and unrelated to the show as a whole, and I really wish that when they had decided they were going to do a second half of the season, because the rumor is that they were supposed to end it when the Jaku King was defeated the first time, I wish they had just done a soft reboot of a different series instead of trying to keep Nagisa and Honoka around, because those two cannot carry a story.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I wish that the villains had any sort of charisma at all, because they don't. But B, I wish that if we were going to do this plot about the power of annihilation is slowly eating them from the inside out, and the more they use their power, the faster they will be destroyed by it. Mm-hmm. I wish we'd seen, hints of that leading up to now. I wish that they'd been, in pain as they were fighting the PreCure, because this just came out of nowhere. They just pulled it out of the brown zone.
Yeah, that is largely my problem with Futari Wa, and although I love Tropical Rouge, that's my problem with Tropical Rouge, it just feels like they're pulling plot elements out of their butt, and that's why I really like the story-focused elements of Star Twinkle and Maho Tsukai and Go Princess, because it always felt like they were working towards something, whereas in this one, they could literally introduce a 4th evil general next episode, and it wouldn't surprise me. I'd just be like, yeah, I guess this is about on par with the rest of the plot devices they've used.
Yeah.
How did you like this episode?
I didn't hate it as much as you do.
Okay.
I thought that the parts that weren't a superhero show were actually really good. So, all of the stuff about the lacrosse game, Nagisa's emotions for her teammates, her wanting to support them, the line about this is the seniors' final chance to win a championship game, so we have to do this for them.
Their senpai are graduating.
Yeah.
We've all seen that before.
That was all cute. That was great. And then they ruined it with friggin' Belze and Jiro or whatever his name is.
Juna, Belze, and Regine, I'm pretty sure are their names.
Fart, Butts, and Poops are
listen,
their names.
Listen, really quickly, I want to address a comment that I saw while I was saying I don't like this episode, and a bunch of people were like, oh, you don't like Futari Wa? And I was like, yeah, no, I don't. So really quickly, I did see someone comment that they liked the 3 generals in this part of the season better than the generals in the first half of the season. Everyone's allowed to have different perspective on things. People can read different subtext, but I'm going to have to firmly disagree, because in the first season, or the first half of the season, you know what I mean. Pissard, the first guy who showed up, the clown-looking guy, he wasn't super interesting to me. I think the next guy was Ungai or whatever. He was
big buff dude.
He was just a dumb brute guy. He just punched really hard.
But the brother-sister.
But Kiria and Poisony and Il Kubo, they had some actual motivation. They had reasons for wanting to do the things that they do. And while you could say that the 3 generals, the evil seeds, have personalities, those personalities are just a little guy, Belze, a big buff guy, that's Juna, who likes to scream really loud because he's angry, and Regine's one personality trait is a joke that got old after the first time that they told it, where she says something really quietly and everyone goes, what? And then she says it really quietly and they go, what? And then she yells it really loud and everyone's surprised. Every time, even though it's the only way she knows how to communicate.
Yeah. I was really attached to Kiria. I thought they did a really good job with him, and his death was emotionally impactful, and I feel nothing for these 3 villains. I feel more for the Zakena Butlers than I feel for these 3 villains.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have personalities.
And I do want to say, I think we mentioned this last episode, or the episode before. Futari Wa is literally just all blending together. All I can hear is Poloon screaming Popo and accept the power of light in my head over and over again. But at some point, Nagisa and Honoka had a moment where they talked about missing Kiria, or I guess Honoka kind of missed Kiria, and Nagisa was like, oh, do you want to see him again? And she's like, I'm conflicted. That's the most interesting emotion that Honoka has ever expressed. The desire to see someone that she cared for while also knowing that he was secretly, like, out to get her and was not really her friend and that sort of thing. I think that he's coming back. It feels like such a weird way to get rid of a character, to have him just, like, walk away and never come back. I think at the end of the series, if they reset time with their magic friendship power, he'll come back.
You know what I just remembered, thinking of ways villains have come back?
What's that?
I just remembered Baby Noir and Baby Lumiere and their little baby dog.
And they were fighting each other, or he was being mean to her, but that's only because she was gross and had cooties, and that's how he shows that he liked her or whatever.
That was cute.
Absolutely. We didn't talk about the specific thing in Tropical Rouge that I said we should talk about. We'll save that for looking ahead, for future predictions.
Okay.
But if we forget, I'm gonna be a little grumpy.
Okay. I do have one more thing I want to say on Futari Wa.
Yep.
This season has a sequel season, Futari Wa Max Heart. In your discussing our feelings about Futari Wa with the Precord server, you were told in no uncertain terms, maybe you should take a break before you watch Max Heart.
Yes. What I've seen, and I can't remember if it's the same person because someone said this a couple of weeks ago in the Precord server as well, but because Max Heart and the original Futari Wa have just Nagisa and Honoka, whether you'll like the two seasons really will depend on whether you like those two. And since I think that they're pretty blank slates as characters, that's why they advised me not to go directly into Max Heart. Whereas if you're like, yes, I love the Nagisa Honoka soup, let me slurp some more up, then they would recommend that you go on to it. They also indicated that whether you like Fuji P and him being a character could also affect your enjoyment of the next season. I know that there's a reputation that PreCure is just gay all the way down, that the only good relationships are the ones between two female characters, and that's at the core of the series. I don't dislike Fuji P and Nagisa because it's a hetero relationship. I dislike it because there is nothing about Fuji P that is interesting, and Nagisa has spent 41 episodes looking at him and going, wow, he's really pretty, and not once has she ever had a single moment of character development that pushes her towards him.
Absolutely. There are two good hetero relationships in PreCure, and this proves that we believe it's possible. Number one is in Fresh PreCure between Love and Daisuke. They are very cute, and I like their contentious kind of fondness for one another. Mm-hmm. Number two, Ryo and Ichika. And I know many people in the fandom despise the Ryo Ichika ship. I don't care. It's my podcast. I can say what I want.
Yeah, the Ryo Ichika relationship, if it had been more
explicit?
Yeah, explicit. Less subtext, more text. I could see it rubbing people the wrong way because of the way he treated her when he was evil, and if he just, like, was instantly forgiven, that would kind of be dumb. But for the most part, he does seem to legitimately regret his actions, and he doesn't, like, treat her as if, like, she belongs to him, which is kind of like a problematic thing you see from some villain-type things. But anyways, that was a good relationship, and yeah, I want two characters who actually are characters, and Fuji P is just a guy. I don't even know why Nagisa likes him, except I think that she thinks he's pretty. And that's it.
He's good at sports. He plays soccer real good. They established that in, like, the first episode.
That's true, yeah, he can kick a soccer ball. Do we want to move on to the one and only episode of PreCure I actually liked this week from the 4 that we watched?
Sure, we watched 2 episodes of Fresh.
Did we?
Yes.
I said the one that I liked of the 4 we watched.
No, I know.
So this week, we forgot to mention it last week, but we watched another 2 episodes of Fresh PreCure. We watched episodes 33 and 34. We'll tackle them in order, as we do. 33... So in episode 33, we find out that Miki is afraid of octupi. And that's not really what the episode's about. The episode is really about Miki and Setsuna have a day out on the town. They were supposed to be all 4 of the girls kind of going out and enjoying themselves, but Buki has to help at the veterinarian clinic that her parents run, and Love is temporarily sick. So it's just these 2 characters, and it turns out they don't really fit well together. They don't mesh because of their personality. Setsuna basically has no social skills. However, Miki reveals that she's afraid of octopi. She just, is, deathly afraid of them. You even say the word octopi and she breaks out into, goosebumps. Setsuna is able to say, hey, it's okay. You have us. She doesn't say it exactly like that, but basically, through the power of friendship, Miki is able to overcome her fear, and Setsuna reveals that her fear is losing the rest of the PreCure team, which, oof, ouch, my bones. That's dark. That's literally what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of high places. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid of clowns. They freak me out. What are you afraid of? Everyone will eventually leave me and they'll die. Oh my god, Setsuna! That's dark.
Yeah, I think maybe she's still grappling with her guilt over having...
Absolutely.
Does she deserve these friends? Does she deserve happiness?
It's such a good episode. There's conflict, there's character interaction. I never would have guessed that Miki is afraid of octopi, you know? So... Yeah,
because octopi are perfect. So you'd think that she likes them.
I guess so. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. How did you like this episode?
I thought it was really cute.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Miki was the most suspicious of Setsuna, and she was the angriest when Setsuna turned out to be Ys. So it was cool for them to have a moment where they came together and they learned to be teammates without Love or Buki there to kind of smooth things over.
The social lubricant is the word, which every time I hear it, I go, but it is the word used by society, so.
Lubricant.
I like it too. So we've had a couple of characters from the seasons we've watched, because there's about 8 or so that we haven't watched, but we've had a couple of characters that are the not very emotive type characters. We've had Minori, we have had Asami from Healin' Good, and I feel like there might have been another one who's completely slipping my mind. I feel like, I guess maybe Toa kind of felt a little monotone at times as well from Go Princess, but I feel like they are all borrowing from Setsuna. Setsuna's story is that she doesn't appear to be human. They haven't explicitly said what Labyrinth is, but she's basically a robot, is my understanding of it. She's from a world where people don't feel emotions, and then she meets these characters who do feel emotions. So when they're out and about and telling jokes or having fun, she is the most disconnected. We pointed that out in the comedy duo episode when she was kind of what are these Monzai bows for? And she couldn't do the joke very well with Miki. And I like her not having emotions way better than I liked Asami not really expressing emotions.
I think it's because Setsuna does have emotions, but she expresses them differently, whereas Asami came across as just not having them.
She felt kind of like... She felt kind of like a mom who was going with her daughters to a comic convention, and she's not really into it herself, but she's happy that they're having fun. You know, she's just kind of I'll go along with whatever you girls want.
That's the vibe. I think you're right. Well, and so Toa, you brought up Toa, and I have to say, as much as Go Princess is my favorite season, I was really disappointed by Toa as a character, because I felt like they could have done a lot more with her, and what I wanted from her character arc was what we're getting from Setsuna. So Setsuna, I like her outfit better, and I like her arc better, and so Toa is just gonna have to deal with that, I guess.
Both Cure Passion and Cure...
Scarlet.
Oh, it was... Okay, I completely blanked on it for a second. But I think that they both have amazing costume designs in their transform state. I think that they have some pretty cool final attacks. But yeah, Setsuna as a character in her street clothes is a bit cooler. Although I do still think that Twilight is one of the best evil generals before she transforms back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I love the evil violin as a weapon.
Absolutely.
It's so cool. And now I'm getting flashbacks to the scene where they played the violin and Kanata was there, and it was so emotional. And Go Princess is such a good season.
Maybe we'll have to do a retrospective episode that's just us gushing about how much we love Go Princess.
Oh, that would be great.
We don't have to turn everything we watch into a podcast episode, but it would be kind of nice to just have like an archive of all of the various PreCure seasons and our thoughts on them.
If you've listened this far, you probably can tell that we like the sound of our own voices. So sometimes we just talk for a long time about things we like, and I don't know if we're saying anything unique or interesting or worthwhile, but we're having a good time. And that's what it's all about.
At the end of the day, the only thing that you need to remember is that Nia Torin is the best fairy that has ever been invented by PreCure.
Hold up. Tart is right there. Tart is
pretty good.
Right there.
Tart is pretty good. I really liked...
Pafu?
Pafu, yes. I couldn't remember her name. Kururun is amazing. Fua is pretty good. But Poloon can get the heck out of here. Aroma, out the window. I'm throwing him out the window. And don't get me started on Mother Flippin' Latte or Rate, depending on which subtitles you're looking at.
Also, I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I didn't much care for Mofuruun. It's a teddy bear.
Oh, yeah. No, Mofuruun is obviously just there to appeal to characters who like cute things. Whereas Kururun is cute and funny and intelligent, and please return my calls, Kururun. I'm begging you. We can make it work.
Joel, I've warned you before about forming parasocial relationships with the PreCure fairies. Just because you see Kururun in the show doesn't mean you know what they're like in their personal life.
Absolutely.
All right, so we did watch one other episode of Fresh.
Yes, we also watched episode 34. Now, here's the weird thing. I can't tell you what episode 34 was about. We have a scratch pad, and I wrote 33, Miki is afraid of octopus, and then 34, but all I see is just, like, weird characters. I have the sticker sheet pulled up, right? I've already made the sticker sheet for that episode, and I don't see anything. I just see weird blobs. So perhaps could you give the succinct summary of episode 34?
Yes, I think I can do it. Westar and Solar decide to finally work together to fill the last little bit of the misery gauge.
So is one of them like on the shoulders of the other?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I imagined. Yeah.
Yep, obviously Solar is on Westar's shoulders because Westar's the strong big himbo boy.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And they have like a pool fight, where they do like the I don't know what you call it.
You're getting ahead of me here. You're getting ahead of me. You're getting into my fan fiction. Westar and Solar team up. They're going to fill the misery gauge. They make a monster. Then they make a second monster. The first monster they make traps everybody in nighttime. And the second monster is there to distract them from fighting the first monster.
So the first monster has like the ability to like stop time, so only the PreCure team are able to move around, and like their parents are frozen, and no, that doesn't happen.
No, everybody can move around.
Oh,
they all wake up, the whole town.
Yeah,
and it's midnight.
All right.
The news is like it appears to be midnight forever.
Okay.
Tomorrow will never come. And that's it.
And that makes people sad because tomorrow is going to be like a big town celebration.
They all had things going on.
Oh.
Her Love's dad was going to play some golf.
Okay.
But like, here's my problem with this concept.
Yeah.
I get the impression from your sarcasm that you have the same problem. Our conception of time is based on our perception of time. Mm-hmm. So if suddenly the clock stopped at midnight and the sun wasn't rising, we would just continue on with our day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't understand, like, okay, I partially get it. If tomorrow's your birthday and that's a big special day, if tomorrow's a holiday, there's lots of reasons why we celebrate the passage of time. But the bad guys didn't mess with anyone's actual perception of time. They could still continue to get on planes and fly around. They could still continue to open their shop. It would be weird and it'd be hard to adjust to, but like as a method of generating despair, this is supposed to be the biggest, most awfulest, despair-inducing moment in the series, and it is the least interesting and it has the smallest impact in my opinion. So I did not particularly care for this episode, although I did particularly love the truck monster.
Yeah, what did James call it? Was it a decatora?
A decatora, yeah.
I googled that after he mentioned it, and like apparently those are really common, and most of them are street legal. So
yeah, it's basically just like a semi-truck, but it's been decked out with like neon lights and stuff.
Usually metallic paint, and they're cool. You should look them up. I feel like we should combine the idea of monster truck rallies and decotora, so we have big decotora trucks fighting each other.
Maybe you can make it a reality TV show like Big Brother or, Great British Bake Off, where they have to do a series of truck-related challenges, and the last one is a demolition derby, but the first two are like more like driving technical skills and that sort of thing.
Okay, I like that. You could also make it a shonen anime where the trucks are sentient and also like Pokemon.
The trucks...
I'm your partner driver.
The trucks are curvaceous ladies.
No.
And it's a light novel, and you can choose which character.
Why? This is a family-friendly podcast.
Look at the caboose on that one.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, you wanted to say something about Tropical Rouge.
I wanted to mention this a couple of episodes ago. I think it was the Asuka episode where they mentioned it. But basically, the Tropical Club is going to dissolve, it seems like. At least Asuka's going to graduate from it. So at one point, Manatsu proposed doing like a club send-off, which I assume is going to be like a luau type thing, just because it's Tropical Club and that makes sense. But what's becoming more apparent to me as they continue to mention it is that this is the series finale. This is the stage upon which the final battle with the Witch of Delays will take place. And it's going to be emotionally important to the characters in their everyday lives because it's related to their school and stuff, but it's also going to be the culmination of their PreCure journey where they're fighting giant crabs or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially since they keep mentioning that the graduation ceremony is coming.
Yes, absolutely.
And the next episode is in fact titled Meeting Tropical Club Members Gather.
That is the most generic episode title I've ever heard, because as far as I knew, every episode starts with the Tropical Club members in their Tropical Club room talking about what they want to do. So when I first saw this title, you know what I imagined?
Tell me.
I imagined that there were 4 branches of the Tropical Club, and that Manatsu is meant to represent the central district, and then she goes to the summit of other Tropical Club presidents where she meets other Manatsus who run their own organizations, and they have to get together to discuss the budget and what Tropica shines the most.
You've heard of Organization 13. Now get ready for Organization Manats 13.
Organization Sunshine. But as I've already mentioned in past episodes, we've had an episode about Asuka getting back together with her ex-girlfriend, and now they're friends and everything's cool. We have seen Songo embrace her true beauty and is the only one to unlock a new power, a new attack. So let that show that she's the one who's undergone the most character growth. So now, obviously, next episode will be a Manatsu episode. That's my guess, and I am willing to put like $5 on the line if it's not.
Do you think they're going to combine the Manatsu Laura episodes?
No, I think Manatsu's episode, we've talked about how she doesn't really plan for the future. Maybe next episode, she'll have to seriously consider for a moment what she's going to do next year or something like that. And she'll come to a decision, but her thinking about the future will cause the episode to end with Laura, like, in thought, because she's realizing, like, oh no, I'm going to have to go back to the Grand Ocean and I might never see these girls again. And so I think we're going to get a Manatsu Laura kind of double episode, but the first half will be focused on Manatsu, and then the second half will be focused on Laura. That's my guess.
Okay, I like that. We put out our discussion question from last week on Twitter, and I don't think we got any responses. Do we have any other tweets in a bottle or thoughts from the crew? Anything to share from Discord, Reddit, etc.?
Right. That one Welder guy, a.k.a. James, a.k.a. CotWN's #1 fan.
A.k.a. Mr. Fancy Fresh.
Yeah, episode. He gave us the title of this episode. We changed it a little bit, but it came from his brain, so all credit goes to him. They said the word papaya so much that it ended up losing its meaning in this episode. And I gotta say, I don't think he saw it, and I think that it came out after he mentioned it in our server. But in the pre-cord server, someone spliced together a supercut of every time they said the word papaya or densetsu no papaya, legendary papaya, and it was a lot. It was a lot,
so
a lot,
funny,
a lot.
though. Like, it destroyed me.
Yes. And then James also agrees that there was a lot of good Manatsu energy. She ran off at lightning speed a couple of times. I wonder if she's getting faster. Manatsu would absolutely be chosen by the Speed Force. I know she would. And then the only other thing is he can't fathom that Minori's whole persona is Papaya. That's her cure name. It's her main plot point in her novel. She's researched them, but she's never tried them. Top 10 anime portrayals.
All I can think of as a fellow ND neurodivergent is that she was fascinated with the idea of them after doing research, but knew things may be icky, so she never tried it. Like, there are a lot of foods that I have considered trying and just won't, because I have specific sensory issues with food, and I'm not going to try something that might be yucky or might make me feel icky.
Have you ever had a favorite character from a series? And for me, it's usually a visual medium, so it's usually manga or anime, but it could be a book. But do you have a favorite character from a series that you've never watched?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's what's happened to Minori. I don't quite understand. I can't empathize with seeing a fruit and attaching yourself to it, but like, I can't think of an example, but there are some characters that I see, and every time I see them on my timeline or whatever, I go, oh, it's that guy. Good for that guy. But I could not tell you anything about their character. I have not seen the series, but I know from their visual design, yeah, that's my favorite guy.
I'm super attached to post-time skip Dimitri from Fire Emblem, and we never got that far in Three Houses. We were really into Three Houses for a while, and then we just stopped.
Yeah, ADHD is a heck of a curse.
Yeah, plus the pandemic, I think, happened, and we just gave up on everything.
Absolutely.
So next week, if you want to send in your tweets in a bottle, you can, of course, just send us your thoughts on the episode for next week, episode 41
of Tropical Rouge. And then we'll be watching another 2 episodes of Fresh, so that'll be 35 and 36, and then episode 42 of Futari Wa.
Excellent. Thank you for laying that out. So you can send us your thoughts on those, or Joel will put this week's discussion question in the Reddit post, in Discord, on Twitter, wherever. Feel free to send in your answers. What is the most major despair moment you can think of? And that has been your doot final thought. Outro goes here.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and don't forget to eat some papaya. PreCure! Papaya, papaya, papaya.
Hey.
Papaya, 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 papaya.
Oh my god, I'm full of Zetsubo. What a shining episode of Cure of the What Now. Thanks for being our Nakama.
Thank you as always for your support. If you could, very kindly, be sure to like or share this with any of your friends. Let them know that we're always open to suggestions or thoughts about any particular episode.
And please take a moment to rate and review us on wherever you get our podcast from. Except for YouTube. You can't rate and review us on YouTube, but you can like and subscribe.
Absolutely. If you like what we're doing, even just a comment that says keep up the great work is always helpful for brightening our day.
Absolutely. Joel, where can our fine listeners find you if they want more of you?
Absolutely. The best way to get in touch with us is to go onto Twitter and find us at KOTWN_pod. That's where we're most active. But of course, we also have a Gmail. That's kingofthewhatpod@gmail.com.
You can also find me at Pirate Ghost Host.
She is much more prolific than I am, but not all of her content is necessarily about the podcast, whereas the other one tries to focus more on the show.
You like our sticker sheets? Joel's got sticker sheets for you. And that has been your Tropica outro.
Do-do-do-do. You'll be dancing with me today.